So I've been watching a lot of episodes of Adventure Time just so that I can be able to understand all of the cameos, references, and Easter eggs that are going to appear throughout Fionna and Cake. But they could also be hinting at the potential fates of some of the characters that we're going to meet up throughout the season. Obviously, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen either show. Now, many fans of the show, of course, recognize this guy as the King of Ooh. He is a con man that deposed Princess Bubblegum of her kingdom until he himself got deposed by one of its people named Crunchy. Well, this guy is a variant of this little bitch. And she originally looked like this in, when Fionna and Cake was originally, a magical place. Which in this one, though, she had a very minor role of stealing some of Fionna and Cake's gold and teaching them and saying that, oh, I'm doing you a favor by stealing your shit by teaching you about, you should stay in your danger and blah, 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 all that other crap. Well, the human version of her is an even bigger asshole. Because, like I said in the previous video, all Fionna and Cake were doing was this used to be Fionna and Cake's boss until she fired them. And then after she saved the world, she just rolls up to them in her bus and starts talking shit to her. And then steals all of her friends' stuff. That's a summary of what happened, but basically it's vaguely similar to what happens in the main timeline. And then after that whole thing with, Queenie in the bus, we meet this character named Lady Cutter, who's actually a variant of this guy named Sir Slicer. And from what I could research onto him, he was just a one-off villain where he's just talking shit to Jake, to Finn and Jake the whole time while I try to navigate this place called the Dungeon of Embarrassment. It's a whole weird thing. But what happens to him, though, is that when he gets off his horse, he's not able to move because his armor is so heavy. Which I believe is probably a lesson in how arrogance weighs you down or something like that. Point is, this guy got weighed down by his own ego, literally. So what happens to the King of Ooh is that Crunchy overthrows him and temporarily becomes the new princess, and as Princess Crunchy the Unforgiving. It was a whole, pretty weird thing. And then he has all the people try to fight an evil lion cloud monster until Princess Bubblegum overthrows him and takes back the whole kingdom. And what happens to the King of Ooh is that he's just slithering out of the city as a puddle of goo. And at the series finale, we see him coming back as a small version of himself wearing nothing but a leaf. If Fionna and Cake is going to share similar story beats with the original show, it could be hinting that one of Queenie's own staff is going to betray her, take all her shit, and then Gary's going to get all of his stuff back. And Queenie is going to wind up homeless and broke. Assuming they do share the similar beats. Although Lady Cutter, I'm pretty sure that whole fight between Fionna and Lady Cutter is definitely going to come back to bite her in the ass later. But if there is some kind of similar beats here, is that it's going to end with her probably not losing all her shit, but wind up humiliated in some way. So, something else here, though, is that I haven't noticed any other variants of Loose Goose. As we've seen throughout Fionna and Cake Season 1, there were different variants of Loose Goose being around. There was that one weird dude in Farmland. And then there was the Pond Swan. I mean, I know Loose Goose, Pond Swan, I know they're two technically different species and different characters, though, but they're very much similar, so I'm counting it anyway. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they're going to have their own weird back alley version of him. Maybe. I don't know. Another thing that I did find out while watching the show is that Princess Bubblegum has a brother she calls Nettie. Okay, this isn't actually what he looks like to scale. He's a lot bigger than this. It's just, when I looked up some images of him, I got a little grossed out by him. But this was what he looked like as a baby until he transformed into a giant gumball monster that drinks sap off of a tree. It's kind of gross to look at. Like, seriously, this is what Princess Bubblegum looks like. It's very uncanny to me. So I'm also really curious, because if Princess Bubblegum has a brother, that could also imply that Gary has a sister. Not just that, though, but he might actually have an uncle and some cousins. And given the relationship Princess Bubblegum had with her family, it's likely not going to end well. Because if you may know, in the series finale, Princess Bubblegum and her uncle Gumball had a war. Though the thing wasn't really one big battle, it was like a big dream sequence. It was cool, but, you know, it just didn't end in some kind of big epic war. But it did end with a battle with a giant chaos god monster. So, taking that bit into consideration, what kind of relationship would Gary have with his family? Would it be just as toxic? Or would it be more positive? We're just not going to know. Although, something else here, though, before I stop the video, is that that before the series ended, it seemed both Marcy and her dad actually have a bit more of a positive relationship at the end of the series, where they were, you know, talking, and he actually stood up to her at a concert. I still think he had some kind of ulterior motive for that, though. Though, I feel like it would be something a little bit more complicated than just wanting grandkids. It's, I don't know, the guy's a psychopath, and he's very dangerous, so who the hell's gonna know? I still think he's a pretty funny guy, though. And that's gonna be it. Thank you for watching it up to here.